Hey guys, Moneyman300 back for some more Forza 6 videos, and we are going to start diving deeper into tips and tricks videos, into tutorials, and we're going to start with the build. We actually started with the, what do we start with? The sys, but we'll really get into the meat here when we get into the build. And I want to start here because I believe this is arguably the most important part of being fast is the build. You got to have the right build for the right track before anything else really matters. It's definitely more important than the tune, and arguably more important than overall driving ability. If you have two people that are both competent drivers and one has a car that's built appropriately for the track you're on, it could be the same exact car, and the other one's not built appropriately, well, you know who's going to win. So the build is super important. And so understanding the concepts in building is what I'm going to try to help with in this video. And we're going to go through, I'm going to talk about the types of builds, or at least the types of builds that I think exist out there. And then we're going to go in, hop into the build itself, and I'm going to go through each part and talk about the importance of those. We'll talk about engine swaps, we'll talk about drivetrains, we'll go through the whole thing, aero, and I'll talk through every single part and the ones I think are the most important, the things that you should use, and I will relate them back to the types of builds. So let's talk about that for a second. There are, I would say, 5 types of builds in Forza. There's a momentum build, and what I'm, kind of a pure momentum car. Think of a track like Alps, as that's like the quintessential momentum track. There aren't any difficult turns. There's no like straight hairpin, or tight hairpin turns that cause you to brake hard and have to accelerate hard. So you don't need things like acceleration. Brakes aren't all that important in that. And you want to be able to turn at higher speed. So you need a car that grips well in high speed turns and at the same time has a decent top end. So that's kind of the characteristics. When I say decent, it's not extreme speed, but a decent top end with really good grip. Acceleration, mid-range acceleration is good, especially a lot of these seem to have hills, so Prague is another example of something like that. Road Atlanta at short would be like a short track momentum, but it's tracks like that don't require any large braking points. So that's what I mean by momentum. They're usually pretty specific builds, and those builds generally only, if it's something that's built specific for that, don't work very well on other tracks. Now, sometimes other cars, like grip cars, tend to work just fine on momentum tracks. You're not going to get top leaderboard times with them, but they're competitive. And you can take a speed car out there. So a momentum track and multiple cars can work okay on there, but a purpose-built momentum car isn't going to work as well on a grip track or on a speed track. So that leads me to the next type of build, and that's a grip build. Also in momentum, generally you're not doing a lot of tire upgrade. You're doing minimal width. You're probably getting bigger wheels on there to get a bigger contact patch. For the higher speed turns. There's a couple other build characteristics in there. I'll kind of get through them in there. But grip tracks are the next one. Usually a little bit smaller, tighter, sharper turns. Think Laguna Seca. Think Catalunya. Tracks, in that neighborhood. I think it's a smaller Circuit of the Americas. Things that have a lot of turns, a lot of tight turns that require acceleration coming out of those turns as well. So you're looking at more race tires on those. You want all the grip that you can get. You want your car to be light. So weight reduction is really, really important. Acceleration. You're building for acceleration and grip on those cars, right? You want to be able to get in and out of turns quickly. All the grip helps with your braking distance, the acceleration to get out of that turn, the ability to make that turn at a decent speed. Top end is not what you're going for. They usually have lower straightaways, so you're not all that concerned with sheer horsepower. You're more concerned with the ability to accelerate and brake. Now, horsepower can translate into acceleration, so it's not like you don't want any. So there's the grip build. Next up, we've got just kind of a speed build, a power build, if you want to call it that. For tracks like a Bathurst, like a Road America, Road Atlanta, Indy GP, the Daytona with the infield. Tracks like that. I'm not talking about oval. I'm not talking about old Le Mans with the really, really, really long straightaways, or Road America, is it East, where it's just got the 2 long straightaways. So this is kind of it's a power build, but it's not we'll go to the next category after that, which will be extreme power, extreme speed, super speed, whatever you're going to call it. But this is just it's a speed build. So you want horsepower. You're generally not going to have full tire upgrades, at least not in the lower classes. You're not as worried about weight reduction, right? Because you're just going to be putting horsepower on there. You're going for a top end for that long Bathurst straight, for those couple of long Road America straights. You want to be able to get through turns, right? You want some grip, but it's not your primary build. You want acceleration, and top end is really what you're going for in those, and you're going to get that through horsepower, through putting horsepower on the car. Next up, we got a super speed build, or extreme speed, or extreme power. You'll hear it called different things. That's for your Le Mans. That's your Le Mans old build, right? You usually have one or two of these cars in that class. You don't need a lot of those. Those tracks don't come up that often, but that's where it's straight top end. No grip, all speed. That's the best way you could put that. You're basically just going to throw every performance part you can get in there, the best engine swap you can get, the highest top end you can get, because that's where you're going to make up all your time, and you just try to manage the best you can through the turns. So that's a very specific build. And the next one also is very specific, and that's the oval tune, right? For Daytona and Indy, completely specific, right? The only track that you'll use this on are those two tracks, and that's it. Sometimes your extreme speed or your super speed and oval cars can intermingle each other occasionally, in especially when you get up in the higher classes, but normally don't, because you probably won't have, you're not going to have brakes. Number one, you may not put any springs on there. You may not even use the roll bars, although that usually the roll bars come at generally limited to no PI cost. So it's going to be really specific on how you build this car. You're only turning one direction. You're going to tune your springs and your damping and your differentials quite a bit different for an oval tune than you will other ones. So, and then I think did I go through? So I went momentum, grip, speed, extreme speed, and oval. So those are the 5. You're also going to have some kind of middle ground, all-arounders that work across multiple, that might be a good grip and speed car at the same time. That happens. Those are just exceptionally good cars, like the Honda S2000 in B class, things like that. So sometimes you have them that cross boundaries, but generally cars fall into each one of those categories. So now that we've got kind of that foundation set, let's hop straight over into the upgrade shop and start talking about parts and the thought process that I go through to build. Now, I'm not going to talk about any one specific build here. I'll make a reference to different builds as I go through each of these parts. My plan is after this is to go in and talk about specifically how you build each one of those types of cars in a different video. So in here, we're going to talk more general, but I am going to go through every part in here and talk about what I think is the effectiveness of that part and when they should be used. Number one, I build from right to left. I start with conversion, and you have to do that because if you're going to do an engine swap, it has impact on the parts that are available in the engine and in the drivetrain. A different transmission, and you're going to have different your weight reduction could be different in the platform and handling, and your engine parts are different. So you start with engine conversion first. So you come in here, and if you're going to do an engine swap, now there are 2 engine swaps that are better than every other engine swap in the game, and that's the 5.7 liter V8 and the 1.6 Rally turbo, the 4-cylinder turbo. Those 2 engines they are the 2 best engine swaps in the game. There are a couple others. There's a V12, I think, a little bit later on, and there's, a couple of the V6s, the 3.2 and the 3.6 aren't bad, but those 2 are far and away the best, and you can see one of them here is right here, the 5.7 liter V8. It starts to lose its effectiveness as you get up into higher classes. Probably doesn't work much past A, I think, is probably the max you're going to go with that one, because you're going to start to get up into either the V12, which is pretty good, or there's a 5.2 liter V10. There's different ones. Those V12's pretty good. There is also a 5.9 liter racing engine, which is like a stock car engine that's good once you get up in there. Different. So you got some different ones as you get into higher classes, but generally speaking, especially if you're building like a D class car, which some of these will fit into, C, B, and on up into A, this 5.7 makes a great speed engine, and if it's available, you're gonna want to do it. over the stock. It's going to be better than the stock. The 1.6 rally engine is available on like the Subarus and the Mitsubishis and the rally type cars, and it's just a great torquey engine, just fantastic acceleration, especially at lower RPMs. So that's a little bit about that. You want to do your engine swap first, and then I'm going to go ahead and just do the engine swap here because there's another part that I want to call attention to. So I'm going to go and put that on there. The next thing you're going to do, you can look at Drivetrain. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, I got to get back out of there. You can look at Drivetrain. I rarely do Drivetrain swaps. Rarely. Occasionally, you'll put an all-wheel drive into maybe a little bit smaller car, in a lower class. But generally speaking, I don't do Drivetrain swaps. I don't. So I don't have a ton of experience in that. I have occasionally taken an all-wheel drive, went to a rear-wheel drive, but it's rare and it's a complete exception. So normally I don't do Drivetrain swaps. So I'm not going to go into that in any level of detail. Next up, Aspiration Conversion. There is, again, one Aspiration Conversion that's better than all the rest, and that's why I picked that engine. It's another thing that makes that 5.7 good, is because you can use the centrifugal supercharger conversion. It does add just a touch of weight, 3419. It actually adds 100 pounds now, which did it used to be that heavy? I don't know that it used to be that heavy, but anyway, and I don't know that it adds that much weight in all cases, but it is going to add some weight. But you do get 60 horsepower for 30 PI. It is the best PI for the buck, and it probably has to do with the fact that it doesn't have a huge impact on torque, but you get a bunch of horsepower out of it, and you're generally doing this on speed builds that you're not that worried about the weight anyway. So if this is available and you have PI to spare, this is the next place you go. Put it on here. Also, but if you're going to use this, you better put it on quick, because there's a combination. There's a couple of things that can happen. Number one, you put other parts in, you come back in here, it won't let you equip this. Just a bug in the game. If you download somebody's tune that has this on there, there are scenarios where once you come in there and take it off, it will not let you equip it, and you basically got to sell the car back and rebuy it. So long-standing Forza bug that's been out there for a while. Just a heads up on that one. These other ones could be used situationally. I don't know the situation specifically. Sometimes the twin to the positive displacement's okay. There's just better, if you're having to put all the performance parts on, you got to come back and put these on here to get to the top of a class is probably when you're going to use these the most. But there are other items, especially the centrifugal supercharger, that is just a better bang. And I do want to put that on there because the upgrades for this won't show up in the engine area unless it's equipped here. So I'll just show that on there. So that's where we start. Next, I move over to aero. I almost always use the front bumper, so the adjustable front, and the adjustable rear wing. In a lot of cases, and it's not true in this car, but in a lot of cases, you actually gain PI by doing this, and it's beneficial. It almost always on all cars helps you. There are exceptions. Again, when you're going for that really high-end, super extreme speed build, you might not use it. I would say you might not use it in the oval, but actually aero can be very helpful on an oval build. But you may not use it in an oval build. In almost all other cases, I use it. As you can see, and if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that it's always on there, and I'm always using it. So that these other parts, I don't normally put bumpers and things like that on there. You can see all it does is raise weight, so and it doesn't do anything to help you in any other area that's even noticeable at all. You're just getting more weight. There really isn't any reason, in my opinion, to use that. So that's the same thing with skirts, side skirts, hoods, scoops, all that stuff. Some of it will take weight off, so you're coming in, if you're trying to get a little weight out, that's the only time I would use that. Maybe you have a lighter hood, lighter bumper in the rear, things like that. All right, on over to the tires and rims. So tire compound. This is all dependent on the type of car that you're building. Could be anywhere. Generally speaking, I like to start with more power and then come back in later to bring this up. These are expensive upgrades. All right. The first upgrade is almost 30 PI. Then you got another 25 and another 20-ish after that. So to go full race weight, you're talking about a lot 80 plus PI to get there. I failed to mention that this is straight circuit building. I think it's pretty obvious, but this is circuit building. This is not a drag. These aren't drag builds, drag tunes, or drifting. So this is all circuit work, what we're doing here. So, if you're doing a grip build, excuse me, if you're doing a grip build, we're going to usually start here. You're going to get as much out of this as you possibly can. The exception of that is in a four-wheel drive car. A lot of times in all-wheel drive cars, you can get away with stock or maybe one upgrade at the most. So, but if you're front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, and you're trying to do grip, usually you're going to go full grip on these. Momentum is going to be kind of somewhere in between. It changes. And it varies and it depends. So that's the compound. Again, it's hard to say, yeah, use this compound or use that. It depends on what we're trying to accomplish with the car. With the super speed car, it's almost always stock, right? Because you're just trying to go all. And with most speed cars, it's usually stock. And grip can fall anywhere in here. Just depends on the nature of the particular car. I like width upgrades. I just do. Now, in a car like this, a front tire width upgrade really isn't going to help you that much because it's rear-wheel drive, and it costs PI. So I normally won't do this. This is pretty typical in a speed build, in a Bathurst or Road America build. You leave the front stock. So a typical build here for that would be stock tire compound, stock front width, and then full rear width. You get the biggest bang for your buck and grip out of that. It's where you're going to be tuning anyways in the rear end of this because it's rear-wheel drive. So that's a pretty typical upgrade. In all-wheel drive cars, I usually like to get all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive is a little bit of the opposite. I usually want to get full here. And the thing about those are you usually end up with full in the rear because the PI goes down instead of up, and you're essentially getting free PI. So I'll put those on there in all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive. Rear-wheel drive, I'm usually concentrating rear width and leaving the front alone, especially if it costs me PI. If it's free, we might put it on there. Wheels, this is all about weight. So there's two things. It's all about if you want to be able to adjust these because you have to put custom wheels on to be able to adjust them. And the next thing is all about weight. A lot of times I'll just pick a really light set of wheels, like I believe... Is it those? So there you go. So those would be, in this case, the lightest wheels. I'm kind of all over the board. A lot of times I already know what I want, but if you don't, you just pick the light ones, and then you can come back and you kind of get a gauge for, okay, those light ones cost, $479. Cost me a couple PI. So if I need to, I can come get a couple PI back out and get a different part. Now, sometimes, let me pick a wheel here and talk about the rim upgrade. So we'll get that. I'll come over here. I'll go, oops, I didn't go back far enough. And we'll go to the rim sizes. So we'll equip that one. This one may not do it. This is generally a PI play. So this one doesn't do it, but you'll see in a lot of cars, I can get a greater rim size and my PI goes down. So it's a way to get extra PI to fit another part in there. Now, it's not going to go down a lot. 1, maybe 2 that you can get out of something like that. In this case, I don't get anything out of it, so I probably am just going to leave it stock on here unless I was trying for momentum, but even then with one upgrade, it's really not going to make that much difference. So momentum cars can usually benefit. An oval car could probably benefit from bigger wheels, but other than that, it's generally a pure PI play or just an exception situation, like a specific car works well with it, and that's to be honest, trial and error and learning and seeing how other people build their cars. So that is the tires and rims. Let's move on over to the drivetrain. All right, clutch. The only time I would ever do a clutch is if it does not cost you any PI at all, which is rare. One exception to this, the 1.6 Rally turbo engine, I believe, always allows a race clutch for free, so just grab it and do it. I always forget to do it because I never use a clutch. You should be, once you're getting into this level, learning or already doing manual with the clutch, so these clutch upgrades do virtually nothing for you. The only time, if you're still using automatic, then they do, but you're going to sacrifice something else for the PI that it costs to put that on there. Transmission. Transmissions are interesting, and they are different on a build by build by build level. So, generally speaking, I want to use stock transmission as I can because they're usually expensive, right? 480 cost me 6 PI. I can get a fair amount of horsepower for 6 PI. The only thing I'm getting out of this is probably adjustable. I don't even think I'm getting more A rule of thumb is if your speed doesn't change here between these, you're probably getting the same amount of gears. The other way you can do is you could select it, go in and tune your cars and see. So if I go in and tune my car right here, real quick, let it save that. And I want to go over here and I can see this is a 6-speed. That's my gearing. I can come over here, select this one, go into tuning and see if it changed that. So this one's a 6-speed. I already know that. So I'm not gonna. So I'm not. There's nothing really to do there. But sometimes you might have a 4-speed here, and you top out your gears before you ever get to the top speed that you need to be able to get to in a speed car. So it's necessary to go to a sport transmission. I rarely ever use a race transmission unless, again, it's free. I don't spend much time tuning individual gears, and I don't think it's rarely necessary unless maybe you're going for that, top 1 leaderboard times, top 10, where you really have to tune it. Even then, what you can get out of that 3 PI is better spent elsewhere. There are also cases that you need to look for that your PI goes down by going to a street transmission. Some of them have extras. This one only has 2 transmissions. Some of them will have 3. You'll get street, sport, and race. This one has stock, sport, and race. So sometimes going to the street, you gain PI back. So that might be the case in the 1.6 Rally engine, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure you check that. So if it gains PI back, I would grab it. If it's free, grab it. If it's not, go with the stock unless those gears just flat out don't work for you. Don't spend the PI there on your initial build. Come back later and add it if you think you really need it. So that's transmission. Driveline. Come in here when you're done with your build. There's two ways to think about it. You can either put on full race driveline here if you don't care about the credits and stuff. It's only 2,000, and then come back and adjust later. This is a weight play only. The only thing it is weight. That's it. Then doesn't do anything else differently. It just takes weight out of the car. So you can either leave it. A lot of times I leave it stock, get my whole build set up, and then I come in here and see if I can get some free weight out of this. If I can get weight without, so you can go right here. I can get a little bit of weight here without changing it. So if I was already at C500, I came up here. Okay, good. I get an extra 2 pounds. So it's a purely a weight play. Differential, always. There's no reason to not take race differential that I can think of. It's free in all cases, and it allows you, and it gives you tuning, the ability to tune your differential. So always take it. Period in a story. There's no reason not to. On over to platform and handling. So this is where you're going to get all of your adjustable parts minus the transmission and the differential. All the rest of your adjustable parts are here. So in order to adjust your parts, you need to have the race versions of all of these things. So race springs and dampers. So every one of these. Let's talk about brakes. Brakes can go both ways. Some people, like myself, I almost always do race brakes in all cases, minus sometimes in a momentum car on a pure Alps build and minus an oval build. In almost all other cases, I love having the adjustable brakes. I want to be able to adjust my brake ratio, the front to back ratio, and I want to be able to adjust the brake pressure. For me, that makes a big difference. It does, in this case, it is 6 PI. Some people will maybe just do a sport brake upgrade, save those 6 PI and put it somewhere else. You kind of have to play around with it. I tend to lean towards always using race brakes. You might find that you get away with sport brakes. You gotta play with it. If you're okay without the adjustable brakes, then this might be good. It's also very car specific. Some cars are cheaper, some cars are more expensive to put the brakes on there. But in almost all cases, I'm going sport brakes or race brakes, and you'll see that in most of my build and tuning videos. Next up, same thing with the springs and dampers. Almost all cases, I'm going to put that in there. Sometimes you can get away with sport, and it's not bad. Sometimes you can get away with stock, and it's okay. Those are the exceptions, though. I'm almost always coming in here, and I'm going to race. You can play around with it, though. And always do your race front. The benefits and tuning that you get with roll bar tuning is huge in this game. That's almost the number one spot of tuning that I do is roll bar tuning. So get your roll bars. They're cheap anyway. They're like 1 PI each. Just always put those on there. Really almost no reason to not do that. Chassis reinforcement. So this one is very, very car specific. And more often than not, I do not use it because of the weight added. There are exceptions. Some cars, it adds a lot of stability to the car in an if you got a car that's really unstable, there are times that this can really improve your stability, and you want to use it. Another thing to look at is sometimes these numbers do different. Like this ups my handling and my braking. Not quite sure how I get heavier and get better braking, but it has to do with the stability of the car and keeping it planted. But it says my acceleration gets worse because of the weight. So you can kind of look at it. Sometimes if the acceleration is good, then you might want to take a closer look at it. But also just test it on the car. Try it out. See what it feels like. If you got a car that's already stable, I usually start without it. And if I got a car that's unstable, just isn't handling well in the tunes, it's just spooky, go ahead and try it with that on there. Some muscle cars do really well with this, and some smaller, high-powered cars do really well with this as well. So it's a bit of a trial and error. I usually start without it just because of the weight, and then come back to it later if I think it's going to really help me. Weight reduction. This is just a great upgrade. Even for speed cars, sometimes you want to get some of the weight out of it. You may go to here and take the 200 out, 270. If you're building an all-arounder, something that's kind of both speed and grip, a little of both, weight's a big deal in that. Weight improves a lot of things. Your handling, your braking, your acceleration, which is big. Acceleration's huge in this game. So you can see it makes my acceleration number go up a lot, makes my handling number go up a lot. But if I'm just trying to get top end, it didn't do anything for that. Right? I think that if you saw my top speed here, which is, this is not great measurements to go by, but it's something to look at. You're not going to see 0.5 mile an hour. So if I'm just going for that more top end, super speed or speed build, it's not really all that beneficial. Now, we are talking about circuit racing, so how you get in and out of turns is important, not just top speed. So in some speed builds, it does make sense to get some of the weight out. If you're building a speed build without it. If it just feels like it's just so sluggish coming out of turns and can't quite get it right, or if you can afford to take some of the weight out, you just get atrocious acceleration out of turns, then go ahead and take some of the weight out and take some of your horsepower off to balance it. So there is that. The goal of this, and I'm just assuming that you guys know some of these basics, but the goal of this is obviously you're picking a car and a class, and you're trying to get it to the top of that class. So in this case, I would be getting to C500. I'd probably be building this class in B. How you pick a car to build into a certain class is kind of specific to each car. Some cars translate up really well, others don't. Others just work better if you keep them behind. So that's kind of a trial and error thing on what cars to take up. Generally speaking, a car could go up a class or two. It could be good in the class that it's in if it starts low enough, and then one, maybe two classes above before it starts to lose its effectiveness. So you can kind of use that as a general rule of thumb in here. I probably should have said that earlier, but I just thought of that. So that is all of our platform and handling. Let's move on over to the engine, and this is a puzzle, is what this is. This is, how do I get the most PI? How do I get the most horsepower for the PI I have remaining? Right now, if I were doing this, I say, okay, I got 20 PI. There's an order to things that I will look at. If I did the centrifugal supercharger, I'll probably start over here to see if I can do any more upgrades to that because they are very efficient with their PI. I go up here, I get 40 horsepower, which is nice. For 26. God, I'd love to do that. This is a point where if I really think I want that 40 horsepower, I'm going to go back and adjust some other part of my build. See if I can go find 6 PI somewhere. I'm going to go change my wheels, bump those down a couple PI. You know, if I had the driveline on there, I'm going to take that out of there. Maybe I upgraded a transmission when I didn't really need to, or maybe I took some weight out of it, and I can go ahead and put that in there. So those are a couple of different things that that you can look at when you do that. Next, the other thing you can look at is sometimes this here makes your PI go down. There's 3 right there. So maybe that benefit of getting that 40 extra horsepower and getting 3 PI here, plus I can get 2 or 3 out of the wheels, now I can get that power upgrade. That's the puzzle piece of this. So that's what I mean by puzzle. It's about getting horsepower in with the PI that you have remaining. But let's say I can't. Okay, I can't do that. The second place I usually look is exhaust. I like exhaust because of the weight benefits that you get out of it. So I can get 5 horsepower for 6 PI, which isn't terrible. 1 for 1 is kind of what you're looking at in this area a lot of times. So I can get 5, and I might just go all the way up to the top. Okay, I can get 18. So I may. Okay, let's go ahead and take the 11 here. So I'm going to take that 11 horsepower, and then I'm probably just going to start to the left and work my way over. I'll talk about each one of these. These are all pretty interchangeable. Don't mean that much. So I might go here and say, okay, yeah, look at that. I can get 7 out of that one to get there. Is there something else that can get me there? All right, no, can't quite get there with that, but I might be able to. If I hadn't, like I didn't make changes to my wheels, I might say, oh, I can get 11 here, plus what I got over there. Now you just go back and change the wheels to get my PI to match up. So that's kind of how all that works there. And you go through each one of these. A couple of them I want to mention specifically. One of them is the cams. This does a little something different. This will lengthen out your power band, as you can see up top. Also tends to lengthen out your gears, so it could have an impact on your torque. Create a little bit lower torque, but it also could be very efficient in PI. I don't do these a lot, but don't discount doing them. And I would probably do them more on speed builds than I would on a grip build. But if you can make the PI fit, it's usually a lot of horsepower, but it comes at a decent PI cost because it does kind of create less torque in a sense. I mean, torque went up, but not up as much as it might in a standard sense. So that's one thing. The rest of these are all pretty standard. They don't do anything special other than it's straight PI horsepower. Some of them take weight off. This one generally will take. If you see like one of these where everything goes green, that means you're adding horsepower and taking weight off. Those are usually pretty good upgrades. All right. So there's another one. All of these are roughly the same. All right. They're just find the puzzle in here. Get the most horsepower for the PI that you have remaining after you've done those other parts. So, and you may have to go back and adjust the other parts if you really want something in there. A couple here. These I don't do very often unless it's more the extreme builds because they add quite a bit of weight. So if I look at my weight, 3458, it adds 30 horsepower, but it also added like 80 or 90 pounds, and that's somewhat significant in a lot of builds. That one jumped up a lot. Sometimes you can come in here like I get free horsepower. I get 7 horsepower for 3458 to 3502, but almost 45 or 50 pounds. That's probably not worth it. If I get 7 horsepower for like 10 pounds, I might do it. And the same thing for oil and cooling. It does a lot of the same stuff. So I can get 2 horsepower, and I get 2 horsepower. I lose 2 PI, and it's heavier. There's nothing good about that upgrade there. So don't even do it. Right? So you got to come in and kind of look at that. But generally speaking, I don't. These are very specific builds, and if I've gotten everything else, I'm just trying to get it just straight as much horsepower, and I don't care at all about weight. That isn't very often, but it's sometimes. Next up, Flywheel. This is a weight one. Like if it's free, put it on there. It doesn't do anything else but take weight off. That's it. It's the only thing it does. It's just like the driveline. I don't even look at that one very often. I usually just use the driveline to kind of balance PI, but I don't do that. So that's it. That is all the parts in there. I hope this helps, for some of you that might be a little bit newer in here, to get a sense for the order to build, the types of cars that you're building to, and just kind of how my thought process in going through a build. A lot of it's trial and error. A lot of it is experience on things that I've built before. A lot of it is going out, and that's just part of the experience part, and looking at what other people have done with their builds. You can download a leaderboard tune. So if you buy a new car, right, brand new, you haven't bought any parts for this car yet, go out. And so first of all, if you go to leaderboard and you find, hey, this car's doing really well. I wonder how they're building that, right? And this is learning. It's not, go ahead and copy them all day long. A lot of people share their builds and tunes. Go out, download the tune, buy a brand new car, apply the tune to it, and then go in to make adjustments. It'll ask you if you want to remove it. You remove it, but it's going to show up with all the parts that you have purchased. So if I come into this front bumper and let's say I had this on there but not equipped, it's going to look like this. Oh, look, he had the front Rosa Era because I got a little home button by it. Go through and you can see exactly how one of those top cars or top tunes was built. Do that. Go do a bunch of those. Look at them. See how people are building those cars. I think you're going to find a lot of the things that I went through in here on those, but it's a great way to learn. Go to the forums. Look at what a lot of open source builds and tunes out there. A lot of different ways that you can learn to build. But anyways, I hope this helps. We're going to get a little bit more specific with a couple builds coming up, and we're going to start diving into the tuning aspects after that. I'm going to have a little tuning school. Is the idea that I've got there. I'm going to be doing some like tuning 100, tuning 101, tuning 201, and get more advanced as we go. But I want to get them out quickly. I want to get these out so people can start taking advantage of some of this and getting better at the game. So anyways, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.